Peyton. Good to see you again on this beautiful day. And this time with a quote by René Girard. We desire what others desire because we imitate their desires. Like, what do you desire and how do you think about desiring what other people desire?
Yes, this is a quote pointing at the ever-present but often invisible reality of mimetic desire. And René Girard is kind of the founder of this concept that's been quite influential in the way that I see the world and kind of see these human dynamics play out of why do we chase the things that we chase? Why do we pursue the things that we pursue? And mimetic desire is invisibly behind so much of this. And looking back in my own life, even has been present in many small and big examples throughout my own life and development. And I think this is a huge part of why the five chimps theory is so real, that we become like the people that we spend the most time around.
I
And
wrote that
why?
down as well. Five
Nice.
gyms.
Yes. And two, speaking of even the very development of our personality from nature and nurture, we've learned that nurture is not, in fact, what we receive from our parents' guidance for the most part. It can be, of course, influenced by the absence of them messing us up beyond all belief, but beyond avoiding the pitfalls of trauma, for example, the nurture part of our personalities does not actually emerge from deliberate guidance from authorities and people above us. Rather, it's shaped primarily by what's called a non-shared environment. This is why two identical twins in with different friend groups turn out much, much differently in terms of personality, despite having identical genomes. And the non-shared environment, in my opinion, it exerts a huge proportion of its influence through this fact of mimetic desire, that we look around us and see what other people desire, see what other people want, and this is how we learn what we desire. Even though we're often blind to this fact in our own life. I can remember back in middle school, I moved to this new school, and I was in sixth grade. I was 11 or 12, and I looked around, and everybody was wearing shirts from Aeropostale, this clothing store that was in the mall near us. Everybody had A87 on their shirts, Aero and Aero NY, and this shirt brand was really popular in my middle school among us 11 and 12-year-olds. And all of a sudden, I didn't know it a year ago, but I really wanted Aeropostale shirts. Mom, I want to go get shirts from this store. Everybody has this shirt, but I don't, and blah, blah, blah. And this looking around, it was sincere, my desire. Like I actually did want these things, but this was not emergent from my innermost being. This clearly occurred because I looked around, I saw what other people desired, and on some level, our minds are programmed to follow that, to mimic, and to have this force of picking up without realizing it, absorbing the desires of the people around us, especially those that we view as peers or that we view as kind of among us or within our tribe or community. What are your thoughts around this? And have you seen this play out in your own life now, kind of reflecting back after learning this?
Hey, for sure, bro. Like, yeah, you said, okay, you didn't know that 1 year ago, but now you wanted, as a 12-year-old, you wanted a shirt like that. It's just like all around us are people desiring stuff. And the 12-year-old desiring a shirt, for example. Then wearing the shirt, and that acts for us as a model. We sometimes
Yeah.
think, okay, oh, he looks cool with that. Okay, I could wear that as well. And a model signals, or desire of a model signals the value of the things the models desire. It's like, okay, it's like a social proof heuristics that also salespeople often abuse in our own lives when they not only abuse but also use. You can use that fairly ethically if you have testimonials of people you helped and say, look, I can do that for you, and look whom I helped, and they say this about me. They say, this was a great job, good way of dealing stuff. I think your Google ratings are a great testimonial as well for your business, isn't it? It's like, it's one of the best salespeople is other people whom you helped and
Yes.
gave a great testimonial, isn't it? Yeah, and in my own life, uh, I see that play out as well. But no, I cannot think of a concrete example yet, but I get influenced. The more I watch media, the more I'm influenced in this regard. The more I compare myself with others, the more I think I want something more. I can remember something now. Um, yeah, I see people riding cars and I think, oh, maybe I should buy one. But do I need one? Definitely not. I don't need any car. Public transport in Switzerland is just working great. It's you hop into the bus and you are on a mountain somewhere then after that. Or ride your bike to a place where you hop into the train and then it rides you anywhere you want. And from there you hike. So I definitely not need a car. Uh, but I wanted one. So, but I overcame that.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the five chimp theory. This is actually um, a very good way to change your own behavior. If you join a group where the desired behavior you have is the norm, and because you're in a group where the people do this stuff and desire to do the stuff which should become the norm in your life, if you think about it and strategize about it, you should really seek out the people and surround yourself with the people who desire the stuff that build you into the personality that you want to become. Like if you want to become more fit, definitely join a group of friends who go to the gym regularly, or who play sports regularly, or go hiking outside regularly, and then you will find yourself desiring to hike more and more. Join a group who go to climbing spots regularly, and then you will find yourself desiring that more and more. So if you really want to change and want a shortcut, then definitely consider the five chimp theory and join a group where the desired behavior you want to enact is the norm, and the people
And
desire to
even
behave like
looking
that.
at like a meta strategy around this, what you point at is why, if ultimately we see our highest goal is this or that, then let us find our five chimps based off of the people whose the effects of their desires have led to this or that. For example, if we want to be happy and healthy and flourishing and have a wonderful family and this and that, we had better look to find our five chimps on people whose actual results are that, because in fact the things that they wanted, the things that they pursued, have led to these effects. And so if we surround ourselves by five chimps who are miserable, then the things that they want very likely led to that effect of being miserable. And yeah, this is a way that we can kind of make it natural for us to orient ourselves in a way that leads to good fruits. And the fruit check of our five chimps is an essential heuristic in our life.
The can you repeat that? The fruit?
Yeah, the fruit check. So in other
Ah, the
words,
fruit check.
this saying that I think Jesus said when his disciples said, like, how do we know who's legit or who's unlegit? How do we know whose teachings we can abide or not abide? He says, you will know them by their fruit. He doesn't say, look to people who say the same things as me, look to people who appear the same way as me, look to people who have this title or who are respected in this way. He says, look to their fruit. And this is the way that I suggest we should find our five chimps, by identifying what is the fruit that I ultimately want, and then looking at, have my five chimps obtained such fruit of happiness or flourishing or health or well-being or connectedness or positive impact on the lives of others. And then we can see that the things that they wanted, the things that they pursued, led to this or that effect.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome fruit check heuristics as well. Being able to use it as a a meta strategy to shape yourself into a personality which you want to shape yourself in. And also, now we got this heuristic of always invert. And then you can say, apply it, like you said, which fruits do I not want to have in my life? And then you can say, okay, these
Yes.
people always stress out about nothing. These people like are in a constant bad mood, or these people shame myself or shame themselves and talk bad about others. Okay, and then I can really select um, the people who not display any of these. So then your life stays rich and you don't optimize for prematurely decided upon optimization criterion, but you avoid the things you don't want to have in your life, so your life stays rich and the options stay open. So definitely a good way. Avoid the people who display the fruits that you don't want to live within your own life. And also you can like do the fruit check with the people you surround yourself right now. Are the people high energy or intelligent, or are they displaying like constant nagging or dissatisfaction? And the other question then is, do you want nagging and dissatisfaction or not? And then you can overgrow the weeds actually if you invest more of your nutrition, time, and energy into the plants you want to grow, like a gardener growing. And I desire to have a great and beautiful garden, because there's a saying, isn't it, that don't chase butterflies, they will fly away. But if you cultivate a beautiful garden with wonderful flowers, butterflies will come to you.
Yeah, that's a great saying, and it points at yeah, the power of attracting versus trying to force and pursue. It's a useful pointer at a lot of things in our life. Like when we try to, if we try too hard to be happy or to be free, or like we're trying to effort our way into these things, a lot of times it doesn't work. Like me, if I get too caught up in I don't want to be stressed, 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 then the person that calls me on the phone, I'm like, God damn it, can't you tell I'm trying not to be stressed? And I've literally seen myself do this the last couple of weeks, and it's like, dude, I am the one that's reacting in this way to this because I'm trying to force myself to be in a certain way and resist this other way of being. This yields the exact opposite results of what I claim to be orienting myself toward, because I'm going about it wrong. I'm going about it with the wrong energy and posture.
Yeah, man. Like it's the thing. Don't be overly attached to certain kinds of outcomes. Don't be overly attached to avoid certain kinds of fruits of people. Don't be attached to cultivate only people who really display the fruits that you want to display yourself. Don't be overly attached, or you will be rigid and you will break. That's what Lao Tse also talked about 2,500 years ago somehow, isn't it? Uh, and since we already have like um, mentioned Charlie Munger once, we can mention him twice now. I read a book recently. It's called From Barrister to Billionaire, from Andrew Wilkinson. And on the later stages, when he became a billionaire, he was on the verge of doing a deal with Charlie Munger to merge some of the companies or whatever, which really generated much wealth for him. But on his mission to merging the companies, he had first to travel around and go talk to the CEOs and investors who could like help out or invest as well. And he went to really many people and really wealthy people. And one invited him in to his little seaside shack, a property which was valued maybe around $10 million, and he was constantly referring to it as his shack because his neighbors next to him, left and right, had houses, which properties which valued around $25 million, and he was like having this inferiority complex about it. It's like the constant desire of wanting more because other people have more. And then he went to another guy complaining about Jeff Bezos buying another house for some 100 million, and he said, but he was a billionaire himself, the one who complained. He, like tens of millions of dollars worth of wealth under his belt. And then he asked him back and said, yeah, but don't you also have like, aren't you also really rich? Yeah, I have yacht money, but Jeff Bezos has super yacht money. And
Yes.
it's not knowing what is enough will always suck you in deeper and deeper, and you will compare yourself and be dissatisfied all along. And this kind of feeling of jealousy and envy definitely is something which can come up in any scale of any kind of wealth you can have. If you compare yourself to something greater, you will always have the feeling of inferiority and not knowing what is enough. But true wealth, like Nassim Taleb said, is like freedom from jealousy, freedom from envy, and
Yes.
access to a hammock, for example. What do you
I
think about
yeah,
that?
that's a good heuristic right there. I actually had an experience like this, like really vividly, just a couple of weeks ago. I was in the same within a couple of days. I was on a call with a couple of people that were a little bit earlier on in the journey than me, and they were thinking about doing this or that and buying a business. And then another guy was who also is a couple years younger than me was talking to me about buying some real estate and looking to learn from my experience with the self storage and the rentals and this and that. And then I go and have lunch with this guy who is much further along than me in the real estate, and so maybe um, instead of a few million of assets, he has a couple $100 million of assets. And so I was talking to him, and he was telling me these strategies, and I was thinking like, wow, this guy is really successful. He spends weeks at Burning Man, and he has all this 200,000 square foot office building that he is renovating, and he has no debt, and wow, what a good strategy, and he does these smart things. And then he's telling me of this guy that has billions instead of hundreds of millions of real estate, and these families, and how impressive they are, and the strategies that they use, and this clever buyout financial structure, and this and that. And I noticed this layered thing of these people come to me, and I'm coming to this guy, and this guy is coming to this guy, and all of us seem to look at the next, and all of us seem to look at the next level, and all of us orient ourselves in comparison relative to this model that we see, and are orienting and looking for advice based off of that model, and what did this person do to reach this next level. And ultimately and it even came up that this I forget the details, but something pointed me to the fact that this person that this guy was saying is at this billions level, that this person had told him that he was looking at the guy at the next level. So we always are looking at this next person and next and next and next and next level of success, and it is this treadmill, and so much of how we view our own success is this comparison, and ultimately it comes back to status, and if we view things through comparison is a status game, and that's kind of what I believe is at the evolutionary root of this power of mimetic desire. I think two things, in fact. Like one is status, in the way that status is inherently zero sum. Status depends not on what we have relative to nothing. The status does not depend on an absolute quantity of what we have or do not have. Status is inherently comparative. It's inherently zero sum. Its status is what do I have in comparison to what the people around me have. And this applies not just to possessions, of course, but to power, to abilities, to strengths and weaknesses, to popularity, to whatever. Status is like this, and so this, I think, is one of the evolutionary roots of mimetic desire, because we evolved in these bands of 50 to 150 Homo sapiens, and survival and reproduction had a lot to do with our status and reputation within these groups. But the other thing that I think is at the root of this, in terms of our deep psychology, the psychology that emerged over tens of thousands of generations, is that it's actually in that context of running around on the savannah looking for food and trying to avoid predators. Mimetic desire was a really good heuristic, actually, because back then, if you see somebody is going after this type of berry and they love it and they're eating a shit ton of it, that actually tells you some really useful information. If you see somebody eat a bowl of this delicious berry that they clearly really want and they seem to be digesting it really well, they're not
Yeah,
like
it signals
having
value.
diarrhea and dying in front of you, then you can tell that this is good nutrients. I want this too, and it's a really good rule of thumb here. It saves you a lot of experimenting with poisonous berries if you can just look at what other people seem to be enjoying and go right to them. And same with mushrooms, and same with the types of prey that they eat, and same with the weapon that they seem to use to hunt this prey so effectively. If we can pay attention to these things in this ancient context of foraging, of hunter-gathering, then it is actually a big unlock. And you can see how the people that were really drawn to paying attention to what other people seem to want, they would have had a differential advantage in survival and reproduction because of how many options there are, and it would really narrow the focus at, oh yeah, this thing that this other creature in my immediate, this other Homo sapien in my environment is doing seems to have a fitness payoff. And not that they would use that language about it, but that actually is the logic by which our minds gravitate toward mimetic desire. I would say that it's this heuristic for saving a lot of time and experimentation and going straight to the stuff that seems to feed you and prevent you from getting eaten by things, as well as this status game that it was also extremely relevant in this context of these bands. And so this is this ancient hardware that is currently causing us to see a Super Bowl commercial of a Mercedes-Benz car and have my friend next to me say, "Oh wow, what a cool car," and then me say, "Oh man, I really want that car. My friends think it's cool." and this is the business problem or the business curiosity that I think was answered the most clearly by this concept of mimetic desire. Is this Super Bowl commercial costs more per viewer. This Mercedes-Benz commercial that I see on the Super Bowl costs more per viewer than a targeted ad that is only pointing at the people that can afford a Mercedes-Benz. Why are they paying more to blast this out to everybody, even though 90% of people cannot afford what they're advertising? 90%, it's the least targeted ad possible. It goes to everybody, and most people can't buy what you're selling. Why are you paying more for that per viewer? That makes no sense. And then I learned about mimetic desire, and I'm like, oh, this makes perfect sense. What they are doing is not to communicate to their buyer that this car is good. They are communicating to their buyer that, listen to what your friends are saying around you. Your friends think this car is cool. That's what motivates them to act. That's what actually inspires them to say, oh yeah, I'm going to dedicate a ton of my resources and go into debt to buy this fast depreciating asset. It takes a lot to motivate somebody to do something that's so often inefficient and unaffordable for them. And it's this desire to have what other people want. This mimetic desire and the social proof is such a powerful force. And that's why Super Bowl ads are so expensive, is because they're not communicating that you want this. They're communicating that your friends all around you want this, and you can see it right now that they think it's cool.
Yeah, man, that makes perfect sense. That not targeting a net, but they additionally probably target a net as well. But as well, like increasing the desire for the things because the social proof increases that this desired shiny object is of value. So it signals the value because you see a friend of you desires it. Yeah, man. The objects of desire. We desire what others desire because we imitate their desires. And you talked a lot about status, and how it's like was useful for our survival back in the times as hunter-gatherers. But nowadays we have more options to really escape the status games, to not be within the status ladder and always comparing ourselves to the people of higher status and always having this kind of dissatisfaction, like the super yacht money guy. Therefore, we can be like the Diogenes inside his barrel. Like there's this story when Alexander the Great came to the renowned Diogenes in his barrel, who said, I don't want to have nothing to do with society around me anymore. I'm going to live in a barrel. That's what he said and did. And he was behaving anti-memetically. And when Alexander the Great came and said, even if you would ask for half of my kingdom, what do you want? And he just said, move out of the sun, please. That's what I want.
Legend.
Legend, yeah. And this is very respectable if you really are free from all the pressure of social desires and say, this is enough for me. I really don't need more. I am perfectly happy living in my barrel. I'm in a state of, maybe I'm in a state of bliss or whatever, but I'm not desiring anything else. And maybe it's a feature, maybe it's a bug, but nowadays it turns out to be a feature more and more. And therefore, I also admire Derek Sivers, who founded CD Baby, and he does this really short books and really short talks. What he did was also putting it all into a foundation to help musicians, and then have a payout only monthly, but in a very short, very low amount of his total wealth, so that he was not even tempted, and there was no way back. It was a trapdoor. Like, this is a one-way decision. Put it all away, and then have enough to live upon it, but not being tempted to follow into the super yachts guy thinking and say, oh, I want a big yacht because the other people have a big yacht. And so he says, when he's surrounded with other people like that, because he's coming around, he says, I feel like a sober guy amongst addicts.
Yeah. I see this.
Yeah.
And I saw this firsthand in a smaller scale when I was still at a corporation. I looked at the people that were the highest up in the hierarchy. And first, I looked at the hierarchy itself. I looked around me. I looked at all these people that were pouring so much of their life energy into something that ultimately had very little impact, and playing these politics games and stressing themselves out and making them miserable, and how they define success. And they looked up at success. Who is winning this? What is everybody chasing? And who has got the thing that everybody around me seems to chase? And lo and behold, everybody wanted to be a director. Everybody wanted to be a vice president. And then you see the directors and the vice presidents, and how are they doing? And they were miserable. And I saw it very clearly. It was all over their faces. It was all over their way of being. And what they were doing was living paycheck to paycheck, trying to get a bigger, shinier house in New Jersey, trying to have a newer, nicer car, and trying to keep up with the Jones with each other. And they were trapped on this treadmill. And everybody around me was spending not years, but decades of their life trapped in this cycle of mimetic desire. Not everybody, but it seemed as if 80+% of the people that were in this organization were on the same treadmill, caught in the same culture. And this is the power of culture, in my opinion, or at least a giant source of the power of culture. This is the culture within companies. And so I can say from experience that every time I've gotten a new employee, and this employee had a good attitude, this employee was promising, this employee was working hard, and I paired him up with an employee to train him that had a shitty attitude. The new employee that I paired him up with, it ruined his attitude. He was completely unworkable, and I couldn't keep him because he sucked, because I paired him up with somebody who had a desire to go home early, or a desire to do the least amount of work, or a desire to cut corners. And this culture bleeds right in. People learn how to orient themselves in a new environment based off of what they see, based off of what they absorb, based off of what they see other people want. And this is why the bigger and bigger and bigger the company, the reason why this corporation was, why people were working hard, even though it was completely detached and there were 160,000 employees here, and so your contribution means nothing to the big picture, and you also you don't give a shit about shareholders that are like mutual funds and insurance companies and private equity funds that hold this actual stock. So why do you spend your whole life energy trying to increase shareholder value for shareholders you don't give a shit about? It's because of this culture. It's because you look around and you see what other people are orienting themselves toward and how hard they go. And this is the importance of culture within companies. This is why you cannot ignore culture, or otherwise you have to individually fight every single battle. Culture can fight most of these battles for you. And this is the same within families. This is the same within to a certain extent, communities, I would say, not necessarily whole countries, but communities and cultures within countries. They're so important because, in large part, they show everybody what to orient toward. I come from a culture of Appalachian hillbillies, and so very few people were educated. And education and learning and curiosity were not common mimetic desires, and exploration was not a common mimetic desire. And so many of the people did not go to college. They stayed where they began. They did not pursue growth because growth was not, at least in part, growth was not modeled for them. They did not see other people orienting themselves towards these certain goals. Rather, they saw them orienting themselves towards these other things, toward certain cultural things, toward certain activities, toward certainly being really into high school sports for your entire life, and many of these other things that are culturally shared in common. And there's nothing wrong with them. Like some things are good, some things are bad. But it was so vivid to me to be in this environment when I was growing up and see that everybody wanted to play high school football, and then for the rest of their life imagine that they were still playing high school football, and then go to this other place where being intelligent was valued, or then to another place where having a lot of possessions was valued, and just this difference between these different cultures. What drives a lot of this behavior is that the cultures have a sphere of desire around them, a sphere of things that everybody within them, or most people within them, are orienting themselves toward. And then in turn, it mutually reinforces, and the people learn to orient themselves towards those desires. And then that orientation, and the way that it determines the way that they allocate their energy and plan their path, has a huge impact in the actual lives, in the actual environment, in the actual infrastructure, and the things that go on, and the activities, and whatever. The culture is this great machine that exists within countries, within families, within communities, and mimetic desire is a huge, perhaps the strongest mechanism that cultures use to influence the decisions and actions of the people within them. And one last little example of one of the more baffling examples of mimetic desire that I can think of, and one that just seems so, like, how could that be true given the absolutely central role of natural selection in our sexual preferences? But it is actually even attraction itself. You go to India and you see that people are more attracted to fair-skinned people, and there's a big thing about all of these beauty products are largely about making your skin lighter and lighter. And then you go to Norway and you see that being tan is considered attractive, or whatever, Sweden or the United States or whatever, tanness is considered very attractive. And you go to the Jersey Shore and people are baking themselves in cancer ovens twice a week in order to become super, super tan, and it's horrible for them, and it takes up a ton of time and resources, and it's because attraction is partly determined by those around you. You look at these ancient cultures and you see that, oh wow, it was considered attractive in Victorian England to be obese. And I'm like, how the hell was that considered attractive? That makes no sense. Like, why? How is that? I can't even fathom that. And yet this is true over and over and over. A culture shapes even sexual attraction is subject in large part to this force of mimetic desire. Even if it's things that make us less healthy and less able to reproduce and less likely to survive, it still can be what we desire if we have absorbed based off of what we see people want around us. This is how powerful this force can be.
Yeah, beauty lies in the eyes of the beholders, as the saying goes. And when I think about culture, I want to add that most of the cultures which evolved in local regions, maybe in Africa or like in island regions. Most of the cultures that evolved because of the pressure that surrounded it. Like, obviously, through their culture, the still surviving tribes gained advantages that made them more likely to survive as a group. So even if it may seem opaque of, oh, why the hell are like Philippines believing that sleeping on a coconut tree is evil and you will be possessed by uh, evil evil spirits. Yeah, maybe if you think about this example, maybe it's because it's more likely that a coconut falls on your head when you sleep on a coconut tree and kills you, for example. So the
Yes.
people who held this belief were more likely to survive. As well, in African tribes, you have why do in some tribes in Africa is enormously big, so obviously I cannot distinguish between anything. But in some tribes, it was that the young people went outside the village and had to be on a journey to be on their own and be shepherds on their own, and only after some years they were allowed to come back into the village. And even if you don't know why this certain kind of cultural thing evolved, you can know through the fact of their survival that it is very likely that it enhanced their ability to survive as a group. So even if culture is opaque sometimes, it is, and also referring back to what you said, it helped us survive in a group if we desired the things that other people desired. Coming back to memesis with that. And yeah, and culture is really important in companies as well. And it seems soft, it seems intangible, but it's actually the soft things that drive hard results. If you don't have an environment where you can trust each other, doing good work, being committed or focused or respect each other, if you don't have that environment, it's impossible to trust each other, and it's impossible to get work done if you don't trust each other in a very effective way. You always have to check back, and it's good to check and so on. But if you are always paranoid that something will not get through if you don't check back, it's a lot of wasted energy. So it's actually a precondition to effective work to have a trusting environment where you have respect for each other. So it's true that soft things drive hard results, and especially absence of a balanced application of these soft things really drive results down. And yeah, it's congruent with the saying as well that culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yeah.
You may have a great strategy in an organization where you have many people, but if you have a bad culture, it will ruin you probably in one of those multiverses over a long span of time. So what we want to do is raise our probability of avoiding a ruin. And avoiding ruin means also not overstretching to desires someone else has, for example. Not overstretching to have the biggest car available so that I have to go into debt to pay it, only that I look rich and impress people that I don't even like.
Yeah.
The fastest way to become poor is trying to look rich.
Yes. Yes.
And that's what mimetic desire leads us towards if we are not aware of it. And those are the thin desires. When we follow them, we will be ruined spiritually or emotionally or financially. And therefore, what is a better strategy, in my opinion, is looking for the thick desires. Like, what is the real goal? What is your thing that gives you purpose in life? What is your unique makeup, which you can make productive and apply yourself into the world with your uniqueness, so that some value is being created, some good relationships are being created, or some great art is cultivated. What are the thick desires that we really want? Peyton, maybe something is top of your mind. One thick desire you maybe have, or
Yeah,
thin
this
desires
is.
you want to avoid.
I have both. I have both, and this is a great thought starter for me, and just it is a I would say a really important opportunity for us to examine this incredible point of leverage in our life, which is examining our desires, examining our models who have led us to obtain certain desires. And speaking for myself, I can see that I'm very fortunate to have a few models in my life who clearly desire, or who to me are clearly desiring and pursuing desires that serve them and that have good fruits. But yet these other desires that I have often yield bad fruits. Of course, the desire for money is one that is so obviously poisonous and has been, and greed in general, the excessive desire for money has been so visibly and obviously poisonous that it's talked about in every spiritual tradition since 5,000 years ago. And so this is an easy one to watch out for that tends to creep up from culture. But of course, there's many subtler ones, and there's many ones that we pick up without realizing that we're picking up, and this and that. And it's worth recognizing that desire, or more accurately, a certain form of desire, which I would call craving, is the origin of most of our suffering in this world. Craving this or craving that in general, even if it is something that it is aligned with our flourishing. Even the craving itself, if we do not hold it with balance and wisdom, the craving itself can be a kind of poison within our system. If we become too attached, if we become consumed with the future, if we resist anything that goes against this, and we cannot accept the flow of a reality that is fundamentally outside of our control, this craving is something to be very mindful of, even of our thick desires. But that said, of course, there is this middle way where we will in fact have desires, so we might as well have ones that lead to our flourishing. We might as well have ones that are long term and that orient us wisely toward playing games that yield the greatest and most enduring fruits in our lives. And for me, I believe that has a lot to do with freedom, both internally and externally, which is kind of my thickest desire, or thickest two desires that orient much of my path. But yeah, I am inspired to do some more introspection around this, because I can tell, or I have a sense that I've probably accidentally picked up some desires that may not serve me, or desires that may not, or that may get in the way of my thickest and most important desires, or the way that I'm holding certain desires may be in fact yielding counterproductive results because I am holding them in a way that is out of balance or unhealthy or overly attached or cravey. And so this is kind of a starting point for me of a little bit of, let's check this out. Let's see where these goals come from that orient my actions. Let's see what fruits I would actually in reality expect to get if I get the things that I say that I want. And yeah, because this is a leverage point that in turn moves us toward 1,000 different actions, 1,000 different paths, 1,000 different struggles in our life. And so we'd better choose them carefully. And that's what I'm hoping to do with a little more skill in the coming week. What about you, man? What are your intentions out of this discussion of mimetic desire?
Yeah, actually similar. Be more aware of what I really want, and intentional about how I pursue my day. And the cravings I have, like overgrow them with actions I take. This is my intention in terms of doing the work that makes me anxious if I don't do it, and increases my cravings for shortcuts or avoidance strategies. And therefore growing the garden and improving improving the flower makeup and hoping that through that the butterflies will come.
Yes, yes, wonderful, wonderful. Well, may we cultivate a beautiful garden, and also may we allow the butterflies to come rather than try to chase them and force them.
Oh yeah, man. May we cultivate a beautiful garden. Appreciate you. Thank you for this great conversation and have a great week. See you next time, man.
Likewise, my friend, I appreciate you. I will see you on the next one.
See ya.